NetApp here. I've recently been having a number of conversations with my customers that have centered around how they reduce their carbon footprint. Really, this has come in two flavors. One has been around how do we reduce the carbon impact of the data center itself, and the other piece is actually getting an understanding of the data to make sure that they're only holding and storing the data that drives value for their organization. So the next couple of slides will talk through some of the conversations that we've been having. The first customer had last refreshed their storage estate in their data center 5 years ago. And when they did that, they had a choice of either buying traditional hard disk drive based storage or solid state drive storage. But at the time, the price difference between traditional spinning disk and flash storage was so significant that they decided that they would buy traditional disk on-prem. They'd over-provision that to get the performance they required. However, as those prices have closened over time, we ran a TCO analysis with the customer, and we realised that actually, if we modernise them on all flash storage, we could reduce the data centre rack units by about 80% for them. So this meant that they could consolidate the amount of power and cooling that they were consuming within their data centre by roughly 80%. By doing this, we could show them an 80% CO2 saving on their storage infrastructure. The next piece we looked at was actually understanding the data they had. And more broadly across NetApp, we tend to see that only 20% of data that customers have could be classed as warm. That's data that's accessed within the last 30 days typically. And the other 80% of that data would be classified as cold. NetApp is unique within the marketplace in that we really do deliver a true hybrid multi-cloud experience. We're able to coexist either on-prem, at the edge of a network, or in the public cloud. And so with this relationship that we have with the three main hyperscalers, what we've been able to do with this customer is say, we'll take that 80% of your cold data and we'll cloud tier it into the public cloud of their choice. Now, choosing carefully, you can select carbon neutral public clouds. This means that now their storage infrastructure on-prem, rather than taking up 1,000 units of rack space, it could have been 200 units, but we've managed to get that down to 40 units. That's a compound saving of 96% carbon emissions. The next piece is when we start to look at data itself. Now, data really for organisations has two properties. It can either be your largest asset, it's the piece where you can drive massive value for your organisation, but at the same time, it also carries massive risk if it's not looked after well. Now, if we go back 5 years, most people kept their data within their data centre. However, as we've moved into hybrid multi-cloud environments, we see that data spans ever increasingly disparate landscapes. So it may go from the edge of someone's network at one extreme through to hybrid multi-cloud at the other extreme. And so whilst that increases the opportunity you have to grasp value from your data, it also increases the potential for risk that data carries. So I think that's pretty sensible for anyone to see. But then one of the stats that I recently heard was that with data, 68% of data that is created is never accessed again after it has been created. That means that 2/3 of the data that most people hold in their environments carries no value whatsoever for the organisation. Then when we look at where data is kept, it's in ever more disparate locations. So it might be in the data centre, at the edge of your network, in the cloud, or in a SaaS solution. And then when we look at the risk that carries, the visibility of that data is really the key to reducing the risk that it poses. And so what I'm going to show in a second is how NetApp can use you can use NetApp tools to help get a better sense of what data you're holding. So if I jump over to my web browser, I've gone into Cloud Manager. Cloud Manager is our central location where you can access all of our resources and manage your cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, Google, or your on-prem environment. One of the tools that we recently bought out was DataSense. DataSense really is about getting visibility and understanding of the data that you hold. At the most basic level, it may be that you want to understand what data do you have that's stale. These are files that haven't been modified in over 3 years. You might want to understand what data you're storing that is non-business. So these are files that are not considered to be business related according to their category or file type. And the other piece, especially as people are doing this migration into the public cloud, is understanding what data you have that's duplicated. Now, storage technology on-prem tends to deduplicate your files. That means that you only ever have to store a file once. Yet when you move into the public cloud, you can end up paying for that file multiple times. We can start to look at policies to understand if files have got open permissions on them. And whilst you can do this today in individual locations, what we're tending to see is actually for organisations from a compliance perspective, it's really difficult to get a single pane view across your entire estate. This is where DataSense comes in. We're able to collect any file data that you have, whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud. We also start to look at cloud block storage as well, whether that's in Cloud Volumes ONTAP, whether it's in an Amazon S3 drive, or whether it's data that you hold in OneDrive. So really what we're trying to do is give you visibility of your data to understand what's happening there. If you start to look at data compliance, it may be that you are a CISO and you need to be able to provide data subject access requests for people. Say John Doe comes into your organisation and wants to understand what records you hold on them. We can go in and do a data search, we'll investigate the results, and it will tell us we've got 281 items that reference John Doe, either structured or unstructured data, and also the location of that data. So this one's in an Amazon S3. It's a really good way to start to understand your data, to be able to get rid of the data that you don't need, the data that you're not using, to really, drive down your carbon footprint and reduce your bills when it comes to the public cloud. So really, that was what I wanted to cover in this session. It was how we can help you to modernise your data centre to minimise the carbon footprint that's associated with that, but also how can you get a better view from the top level of your data to make sure that you're only storing the data that your organisation really wants. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.